Recording. All right. So here we are. We're a little bit late today to conversations, and advice on Tuesday, August 16th. And we have, how would you like to be referred to? Is it Matt? Should we go by Matt or Mr. Shills?
You can call me Matt.
Matt. Okay. We have Matt. Matt's our plucky relief, comic relief in the side. And anybody else in Discord who wants to come on in, just raise your hand. But we're going to get going. So somebody was asking what I'm drinking today. You're going to think I'm an alcoholic, but I swear to God, I'm not. So we're drinking Fireball tonight. It's actually my stepson's. Don't tell him. Shh. I stole some of his drinking. And we've had a lot of questions and answers happening all day today. And I want to cover those questions and answers unless anybody else has a specific question to cover. So I'm looking through the list here to see if we have anything immediately relevant. I mean, this is supposed to be about, being here for you to ask questions. And I don't see anybody asking one, or if so, they're too afraid. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and answer a couple questions that I answered for myself today. I have to be a member for 10 minutes to what? To ask questions in Discord? I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know about that.
It gives you a 10-minute timer.
I'm really sorry about that. We've had some pretty bad, griefing in Discord, so we had to really roll it back. Well, Discord channel, it's called The Stage. It's The Stage. And I mean, at some point it might be fun to do video. I don't know how to do that yet. I think it's just a plugin, browser plugin. Aniaski. And we have a couple other great Twitch streamers in the audience today, including, I'm going to shout out Aniaski again. My favorite security streamer at the moment. No offense to anybody else, but she's definitely my favorite. When I am putting on somebody that I just want to watch them do, like, try hack me or hack the bots, I'm usually turning on Aniaski because she's just so much fun to watch as she does her stuff. So please, give her a shout out. She's going through like camera and machine issues right now, but that's fine. She's phenomenal. And, yeah, Mossy Machines, do you use security? I wasn't aware. Yeah, Mossy Machines is good too. All right. So what have we been talking about today? So we're going to go from 7:24 until 8:24, it sounds like. And it is raining today, so no real sunset in IRL today. Sometimes I do that. But I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then we can figure out what kind of question to write for this. So, as you know, I've been doing, Kubernetes and machine learning stuff, machine learning support. I haven't been doing machine learning. I've been doing support for the machines that do the people do the machine learning on. And so these are systems that don't fall under, normal definitions, more normal parameters. They are usually more demanding than, other clusters and stuff. So why do you care, right? I suppose the reason that you would care is if you want to set up your own home lab, it's like, how should I set up my own home lab and why? So that's really the big question here. And this is a question that is covered in the boost. I'm going to put a shout out for the boost again on Sundays from 2 to 6. But it's bigger than that, right? Because it has to do with what are you going to do after you get the basic skills, and how are you going to keep learning things and stuff like that. So I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to ask the question of the group right now. So feel free to type into the chat whatever you want. But I'm going to ask you, and I'll ask Matt here in a bit too and see what Matt thinks. But what are some reasons that you think you should do a home lab? Now we'll start with Matt because he can talk right away while the rest of you are thinking about typing it. Would you mind answering that, Matt? What would you, by the way, do you have a home lab?
Reasons I would do a home lab? I don't.
Yeah.
So
if you were going to do one, why would you do it? Why would you go to the trouble?
Just for testing things.
Testing
purposes and I can break things in a home lab. I can't break things on an enterprise system, you know?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty obvious thing, but it's a good one, right? Being able to test things. Now, why? So I'm being devil's advocate here for you and others. Why is having a home lab different than breaking things at work? I mean, shouldn't you have a dev? I mean, I have an opinion on this, obviously, but let me ask the group the two. Why is breaking things at home still preferable sometimes, even if you have a development environment?
So
Yeah,
I can answer this one
sure.
for you without doxing myself too much. Certain applications that I want to run in our dev environment up until recently require licensing.
Oh, this is true. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So we do
that's
have a dev environment.
that's a good point. I hadn't even talked
That's
about that all day today. I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah. So that's one reason.
Yeah, because go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to
Oh,
add.
okay. I thought I heard something.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say because that, and we've got some more comments here. Home lab for me says Lat Jor is the ability to test and learn new skills and have control over my personal data. Oh my God, that's an important one, right? Nuke the Bunny says you have to clean up after yourselves in a home lab. You don't impact others. You can try out what you want to when you want to, and not need to wait for months for approval. I that captures for me most succinctly the reason that I have always had a home lab of some degree. I told this story earlier today, but I'll just repeat the short version. Because I was interested in Linux in 1994, I started putting Linux. I created actually tuxzone.net, which somebody else owns now. And I gave anybody that I knew an access to command line SSH access to my garage. And they could SSH in and they could do it. And I ran my own mail server. And I actually was copying a guy named Joey, who was the gray beard. That's a term that taught me Linux indirectly when I asked if Solaris. I said, man, I wish I could have Solaris Sun at home because that's what I learned on. And he said, well, you could always use Linux. And I was like, what's Linux? And that set me down putting Linux on, a Mac, on a mock Linux, which is a weird kernel to run. And then later to building my own first PC by hand. And then that was the first time I built, and then putting Linux on there and running it at my desk in my lab. But the reason it was valuable is because I had been doing all that and I got hacked and then I caught a hacker. Lots of fun stories to say about that. But ultimately when the 2000.com bubble burst, some of you are old enough to remember that, I was able to switch over from being a developer to a system administrator, which was the term for SRE back then. And I snagged a job locally when my Java development job for the financial sector at IBM went belly up. I still worked for IBM, but now I was working as a system administrator, entry-level system administrator, and exactly what Anya is doing, I imagine. And I was terrified. I mean, the only work I'd ever done was in the lab, but it was because of my lab that I got the job. Absolutely, it was the only reason. And my manager Ross, who was one of the best managers I've ever had, told me later. He goes, "Well, we take a chance on you." I ended up working with lots and lots of other people who had extensive experience with Solaris machines and AIX and all this. Most of them, by the way, got their experience where? This is going to be a fun question for the audience. Where do you think the most people, besides school, get the most exposure to Unix and Linux skills? In my experience, there's been one place from all the people that I've met that's above everything else. And there's probably lots of ways to do this. I'm curious to hear what you know. When you meet people that know Linux or Unix, on the job, right? And what specific jobs involve Unix, not Linux necessarily? I mean, and we're talking about the 90s if you're that old. Aside from the job, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of leading the question here. Mainframe, that was a good place. Unix, Solaris, AIX. So I'm just gonna give it up. So mainframe DBA, IBM. No, I'm a Unix engineer.
AT&T.
AT&T. These are all good companies, but I guess I should probably ask what industry. System engineering, Solaris. So when I ask the question, where do you, in my opinion, I'm just going to keep saying it. So when people come into the industry and they want to become an IT person, a systems administration person, I my exposure to that has been that they are not coming from college, and maybe I'm leading the question, but where do you think? I guess I encounter them. Most of them, I'll just say it, are coming from the military, and you can say what you want about the military, but I cannot tell you how many people that I've met that were amazing operations people who came to people who came from they came from the military. Yeah, they came from the military. And because they're not teaching Unix in college, I mean, at least they weren't. And they're not teaching, you know, they're not there wasn't a lot of Linux freestyling going on out there. There is more of that now, thank God. But at the time, this was of course 96. Was it 6 or 7? No, I take that back. This was 2000. So in 2000,
It's still happening, Rob.
is
I
it?
took a course earlier in this year, a Red Hat Enterprise Linux course,
Mm-hmm.
and the professor, he teaches a lot of military folks.
Yeah.
Guru Labs was the name of
Guru
the
Labs.
company.
Nice.
Guru Labs, yeah. So I took a course through there, and there was a lot of military guys, and boy, do they know their stuff.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was blown away. We used to call it, well, the guy, one of my team lead was actually a drill sergeant, and we called him Sarge. And he acted like a drill sergeant. He was a wonderful guy. Oh my God, you never want to piss him off. And boy, did he not care about saying the F-bomb. I mean, he was just like at work. He was like, and so, you think about Unix and Linux and you usually think about, like Joey, the graybeard vegan that taught me, Solaris, but Unix and Linux skills are prevalent all over the place. They come from the military. They come from people that want to save the world. The Stallman said they come from people that just want to, improve on what their teacher had taught them. Linus Torvalds with Minix and all that. So you get a lot of participation from different people, and I just wanted to mention that because that. And the main reason I brought that whole story was because it was my work in my own home lab, experimenting and being terrified that I was going to, glue the heat sink wrong onto my CPU and not running Bastille. I don't know if anybody knows it. In the 90s, there was a hardening tool called Bastille, and you would run it, and it would, basically shut your system down from getting hacked. And I didn't run it, and I registered the domain. And of course, everybody. By the way, if you're a hacker, this is for two reasons. If you either want to hack people or if you want to be protected from hackers, don't register a domain name until your server is hardened. Because there are people that are constantly trolling the domain name record bases to see new domains come up, and they launch their automated attacks immediately against new registrations. And that's exactly what happened to me. I registered a new domain name, and within a day I was hacked. And because, I didn't do any hardening on the kernel, and, but I was able to reimage immediately after that. And that particular machine, I didn't know enough. Another time I got hacked, I actually caught the guy or person. And I'll tell that story another day, but for this one, they just launched, one of their rootkits and when it's standard attacks, and they got access, to my unpatched system. And so, these are all things that I learned, some through failure, before I was able to go to work. I mean, and then, I was able to do a lot of other, fun things at work, in the lab as well. So a lab is a good place to have failures that don't hurt you. Another lab story that I want to share. I prefer stories over just, other kind of explanations when I can. Let me see. Not only Linux knowledge mindset and provides that app to overcome. I have a domain that gets a couple of megs of traffic a month that doesn't point anywhere. I assume it's just automated attacks. Yeah. If you actually really want to have fun with this is a really fun exercise. Just for learning, especially if you're a hacker. Fire up a server, either in, your favorite cloud provider or, just, on the outside of your, or of your, I mean, unless you want to port forward all your outbound traffic to your machine, which is probably a bad idea. But really that's all you need to do. If you want to do it at home, you can start up a server and set up an SSH server and everything. And then you can port forward from your router to port 22, and just go watch all of the failed login attempts. They'll be like one a second. It's insane. The amount of botnet traffic that happens is just crazy. How much of that is all attacking all the time. And it's just absolutely fascinating. So another reason to have a home lab, it's another little story. It's a minor success story, but it's also I'll tell you a little fail that I had. Do we have people that we need to ban that I forgot to ban? Please tell me if I don't. Okay, so I was of course, when you first do anything, you want to do everything yourself. You want to build your own computer yourself. You want to run your own mail server, of course, right? And I did, and it was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. It was also one of the hardest things. I had to set up SendMail. A lot of you don't know what that is, and ProcMail, and all this kind of stuff. In fact, I had it set up so that you're going to laugh at this, but I had, I don't know how much I should say. Back in the time, there was no VPN, right? So one of the accounts I was on for IBM didn't have any way for me to log in from home. So I made a way to do that. And I would send myself an email, and the email would be picked up by a ProcMail recipe, and the ProcMail recipe would fire up an SSH tunnel that would connect to my remote home machine, and then I would SSH into the localhost tunnel, and I would have access to my desktop at work. Doing this will get you fired immediately if anybody ever finds out about it. So I'm not telling you to do that. But it was part of that knowledge, gaining that knowledge, was setting up my own mail server. So, so you know how I justified it, and this is all part of my conversation here. So the reason I justified it, it was wrong, but the way I justified it was this: I said, "Look, I'm in charge of the entire mail for this entire company, and that's the story I want to tell you, and why I felt it was necessary to add these little rules here." And port somewhere so I can go to dump. Yes, so I taught myself SendMail and the SendMail config file, which if you've ever played with one is disastrously complicated. And I set it up and I ran my own mail. I ran my own MX records at home and learned how to balance the load across MX records, which is still fun, by the way. I mean, if you have Proton Mail, you have control of your own MX records and stuff. So you can actually have more than one Exchange server if you want. You can put, I'm not talking about Microsoft Exchange, I'm talking about Mail Exchange. And so you can set all that up anyway. And I just run my own mail, and it was really fun, and I could see SendMail working and see all the spam coming in, and that was really one of the reasons that turned me off from the whole thing. There was no spam filtering back then, and email started to get really crazy with spam. And there was, you couldn't blacklist things. So anyway, this fast forward to the story, I've been doing that for a while, and I was going to one of our non-agenda meetings that my really great manager used to have, where he would buy donuts and bagels and put us all in a room and say, "There's no agenda, talk." And we would just talk and eat. And during that time, Russ said to everybody, and I told the story before, but he said, because they're looking for somebody, they lost their SendMail manager. They lost their mail manager. Anybody know SendMail? And there's like a crowd of 15 people in the room on the team, Linux, Unix, all over the place, and Microsoft. And I kind of sheepishly raised my hand, and I was like, I run a SendMail server at home. And everybody looked at me, and they're, taking a break from their bites and their donuts and stuff, and they're kind of smiling at me. And we were all friends. I need to make that clear. This manager had created a really amazing atmosphere of camaraderie and friendship and respect, even though we were all over the place, right, in terms of what tech we knew. And they were all kind of smiling because they knew it was coming. And Ross is going, he's like, "Well, let's talk." And so I got pegged for being responsible for not only installing, but I had to manage the entire mail server for the entire company. And that meant a lot of things, including I had to know it was not a job I would ever wish on anybody, because I had to keep all the mail running. We would get blacklisted all the time because there were assholes inside of sorry for the word French, there's assholes inside of the company who were sending out pictures of their penis to people and stuff like that. And so our whole entire enterprise was getting blacklisted by all of this horrible stuff that was going on. And then I had to get involved with actually reading email and reporting it to HR and things like that. And I was like, oh my God, I never, ever want this job. I can't wish this job on anybody, because you gotta understand, I was not interested in anybody's privacy. I was probably one of the biggest privacy advocates anywhere, but I was being told, look, your server, people would like bombard me. My manager would come in, nice guy, would come in, it's like, mail's down, what's up? And I was like, I don't know. And I'm like, we got blacklisted. I'm like, how do you get blacklisted? Yeah, we got blacklisted. Well, I don't know how we got blacklisted. We need to figure out how come we got blacklisted. How do we get unblacklisted? So we'd have to go to these blacklist servers, and I would have to lobby with them to have them take us off. And they go, you're blacklisted because this and this. And I'm like, it was a pain in the butt. So whether you consider that an opportunity or you consider it whatever, that all started because I started up messing around with SendMail on my own. But that is also what propagated the decision for me, because the mail would go down and nobody cared why it was down or that I had observed protocol or anything. All they care is that mail wasn't getting out. So I said, fine. I made a pass-through reverse shell, like I told you, that would run on cron. So that little thing that I told you about, it would actually run on cron. And if I didn't get an email within 5 minutes that I sent to myself, it would trigger a page. And it would tell me that something was down with the mail system. And I caught mail outages all the time using that hacked system that would never have passed any level of security scrutiny. But it was the only way for me to test the full pass-through of mail. In other words, mail made it all the way to my home and everything in between. And there was at least one time where the failure was on my end, on my server at home. But most of the time it was a transfer agent someplace along the way. And then I would miss, and then I would be dead. And so we were able to fix it. So it was another case where having a lab opened up an opportunity. It just might not have been an opportunity that I wanted. There is one time that I shut down the server while I was going home for the day because I was on my laptop, and I'll tell you this last cautionary tale before I move on to the next question. I was on my Linux laptop because I run Linux on the desktop, and I was happy that IBM allowed that. And I mean, this is, I don't even know if they allowed it. I just did it anyway. And, I was running it, and I went, I've told the story before. So I went ahead and I typed shutdown-r now, and my laptop didn't stop. And I was like, excuse the vulgarity, but I said, oh shit. And I looked up, and I'll never remember, Brent was right across from me, the guy that I taught Linux to, who taught me Solaris. And he's like, what? And I said, I think I just shut down the corporate mail server. It's like, you did what? And you got to understand, the mail server was running in Denver. It wasn't in any place that we could get to. And it was after hours, and we had been there late. And I was like, yeah, I think I just shut the mail server down on accident. And because the only way to get the mail server done when you do that is to go have an operator push the power button. And I mean, I was already on the hook for being the mail guy. I was literally a one-man shop for all the mail in the company. And so I mean, and it was my first year. I mean, it was like my first or second year. I can't remember. And so, I remember standing up, and I've told the story before. It might change slightly, but I remember going up and talking to this amazing manager. I'm so glad I had this manager who took a chance on me. I said, I think it was the mail server. It might not have actually even been the mail server. It might have been another one. But I don't. I recall it being the mail server. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, I think I just shut the mail server down, and we're gonna need to call Denver." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, I was trying to log out for the day, and I was on the wrong machine." And by the way, the command is this: shut down. You see it in Mr. Robot all the time. -h now. It means halt the system and shut it down right now. Right? And I was used to typing that from my command line, turn my laptop off. The problem is that I didn't look at this thing right here. I didn't look at what server I was on. And so I was on the wrong server. I was not on my laptop. I was still logged into the server I've been working on. And I did it fast because I was tired, and I ended up shutting this thing down. And I know, GG, right? And so lucky for me, the server didn't go all the way down. I have no idea why. The server went all the way down to I think a init 2. Resume generating event. Shut up. I mean, it went all the way down to like it had networking accessibility, but it was no longer accessible through any type of remote network. It was still sending mail. This is the craziest thing. It was still sending mail or doing whatever. You just couldn't log into it. I couldn't SSH into it. It lost its network connectivity or whatever. And something about the shutdown process had actually stopped it from going all the way down. And we didn't find this out until we called into Denver. My manager called it in. Says, you need to go, we need to get hands on this computer as soon as possible. So he goes out there and the operator's like, it's fine, it's running. I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, uh-oh. So we had to make a decision. Like, do we do a hard power off? And the operator didn't have a screen to it, if I remember correctly. And so they ended up hard powering the machine off, which you should never do usually. But they hard powered it off, brought it back up, and we were fine. And I was like nearly in tears because it was like my first year and a half, and they'd taken a break on me as an entry level programmer or engineer. And I said, you're not gonna fire me then, right? And I'm like, and I was sort of joking, but I was legitimately worried about it. And he said, and I will never ever forget this. And I might get teary eyes talking about this. He said, "Why would I fire you?" Because he goes, "If I fire you," and he tried to make light of it. And he goes, "If I fire you, then the next person coming along is going to make the same mistake." And then he looked at me very seriously with a kind of a smile on his face. And he said, "You're not going to make that mistake again, are you?" I went, no. Hell no. So I'm going to keep you because you're not going to make that mistake again. This guy was like the salt of the earth. I hope everybody has a development manager like him because, he just took me to the next level. And he was just so amazing. Anyway, so hopefully you'll have experiences like that. And, it was that kind of experience and it was those failures and it was the lab where I could do that. It was the lab where you can make those failures and not have to depend on a really amazing manager to get you out of trouble, right? And my manager wasn't even particularly technical. He just knew what he had to do, and he was an amazing human being. And I mean, I'll never ever forget him. He's the kind of guy who used to send, literally, he would send roses to my ex-wife. She's, by the time when I had to get called in on pager, I had to work all night, and he would send my wife flowers because he wanted to. He was salt of the earth manager, and I know they exist. It takes a very unique skill set to be able to do that. And I encourage anybody who is in that role because you have a really amazing opportunity to really help people, to grow, to learn, and to just have hope in humanity. I mean, he could have yelled at me, he could have fired me right on the spot. There's a million things he could have done. And by the way, I've had other managers. I have had other managers with similar names, by the way, that ended up dying of cancer. And I was like, good riddance. I know that's a horrible thing to say. I mean, that's how bad they were. And I don't even want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that right now because it was so negative. I mean, seriously, I know that sounds harsh, but if I told you the stories that I could tell you, that single-handedly tanked my career for like 6 years on purpose for reasons that I don't want to get to. Anyway, so hopefully you have a good manager. Maybe we should put a question like that. So, how can I be a great manager? How about that? We'll make a question up for that. So there's the home lab thing. I'll go back and see if we have some other questions here. My wife just got home. She's going to want help, but I'm kind of busy right now. My stepson can help. All right, so let's go. Let's see. What else we got? Do we have any other questions? How about Elixir? Peter says. I love Elixir. You had one VP who worked on the weekend during most of it and then gave the whole team $200 gift cards. Wow. Rumor has it's from his own pocket. It usually has to be because, they can't, right? They can't, I mean, this is somebody asked this question earlier, so I'll just change the topic a little bit. But how about Elixir? Elixir is an amazing programming language. It's that I want to learn. You know the meme where the guy's looking at the girl's butt while he's with his girlfriend? That's me in Elixir. Erlang or Elixir. I really want to learn it. I think Elixir or Lang is, first of all, it's the most performant language on the planet in terms of concurrency, and that's reason enough for me to learn it. Uh, it was developed by Ericsson to handle phone switching for communications, real time streaming, lots of data and everything. It's a really an amazing language, and it's been used for all over the place, including GitHub and Discord and everywhere else that's using high performance concurrency. So I think it's a great language, and I think everybody should learn it. I have never learned it. I haven't done anything with it. Add it to the list. So, but that's one I really like. Akip asked another question. What programming are you witnessing you're most proud of? All right, let's try that one. So Akip, our king of questions, I love it. What program that you have written or that you have worked on that you're most proud of? Well, I mean, it's a little bit bragging, tooting my own horn. When have I not? But I will say that my, magnum opus, if you will, was writing the communications protocol and the client and server side of it to handle audit compliance data extraction for about 52,000 machines while I was at IBM in the Fortune 500. There was no tool to do that. We were a very small team, 6 to 8 of us. We created a thing for global services called Virtual Server Administrator. Some of you out there may have actually used it. And we were brought together. We were kind of handpicked from a group and put together in kind of a, think tanky kind of Palo Alto kind of environment where we worked from our own houses and stuff, but we were brought together to make this thing. And they said, look, we need to reduce costs for managing servers and we need to keep ourselves compliant, and we don't have enough people to pay. And our ratio is like 1 to 20 right now, 1 admin per 20 servers. We need to take that ratio up to 1 to 300. What can we do? They flew us all into Boulder, Colorado, for 2 weeks. I was the UML guy. I designed the whole database in Dia and just printed it out in these big, huge pieces of paper in UML and Dia, and I introduced our whole team to UUIDs. I'd never even heard of the term before. It pays to have software experience on an operations team. Nobody in the room had any formal development training except for me, and there were like 12 or 15 of us. And so, I was brand new to the team. They had just brought me in for this project, and I had to very sheepishly raise my hand every once in a while. I was like, because they were going to use names as unique identifiers for everything. I'm like, well, what if the host name changes? And they're like, you could use UUIDs. And I'm like, what's a UUID? And so it was fun because, I got to be a subject matter expert in the team, and it wasn't hard to shine because they're yeah, I know, dude, believe me, it was, as I said, it wasn't hard to shine on that team because they had been, doing everything in, the client for Windows was Visual Basic, and they had been doing all of that, and it was just all shell scripts. It was all scripts. You know what? All of this data was all in a network directory tree, and they were just tarring it every once in a while. They had no source management whatsoever. They'd never heard of it, didn't know what it was. So, I helped them get CVS set up initially. And then we moved to the other one after that, and then eventually to Git, I think, but I wasn't there when they did that. But anyway, I created a protocol that, was based on MIME. I used MIME, multi-part, internet mail exchange format, and it would have headers on it. And then I would negotiate. I basically wrote a simplistic version of TLS, using the MIME headers only, and then the bodies were encoded so that the data never landed on any system unless it was encoded. And they would have to have the private key in order to read the data. So our system, all the data at rest, it was never a requirement, but it always made me uncomfortable that all this compliance data, which had been gathered as root, was, traveling and getting on, who knows where it would ever land. But it was, I built the whole system based on content encryption instead of tunnel encryption like TLS does. So it would transfer GPG data, and we used GPG for the whole thing. And I wrote the whole Python library that wrapped the GPG library and the executable, I'm sorry. And then that would exchange data. And So yeah, I mean, and that ran on tons and tons of computers for a long time, and it got really popular, so popular that our salespeople would push that instead of Tivoli, and that made Tivoli really mad, and there was a big fight, and our team lost, and we got bought internally by Tivoli, who subsequently did nothing with it, and I was just and they gave my project to some other people who were maintaining it, and I was brought in, but they used that project for a good 5 years after that, because they couldn't get off of it because they wanted to keep that because it was free and use open source. Oh, I had never known Postgres, by the way. I taught myself Postgres for that project, and we had no idea. We were pushing like a terabyte of data a day through the pipes of the databases to the bigger databases at Central and into the DB2 database, and we had no idea. I've never done any database management. I had never written anything about, I had no idea what normalization was other than what I found out later. We didn't have any periodic, like caching tables or anything in data. I just, all stuff that I had to learn. So I'm super proud of that project because I had to learn everything to do it. And I remember printing out all the Postgres manuals. I had like a stack. I probably still have them somewhere. And I was reading those like out in Arizona on the patio, trying to just master Postgres overnight, so that we could do, organize this data in a way that was reliable. And again, we like, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. At any moment, I thought the whole thing was going to fall over on its face because I didn't consider myself good enough to be doing this stuff. But, at every step along the way, we just learned from our errors and we iterated and there was a very low bar because there was nothing. And it's kind of nice when there's nothing because you're not trying to meet up to somebody's expectations or something. So that's probably my favorite project. I'll stop talking now about that one. What time is it? So we've got, how much time we got? How much time do we got? Do we have enough time to do 8:02? Okay, so we got another 20 minutes. Boy, I must be talking fast again. What are my thoughts? Oh wait, let me see if I can get them in order. Question. Well, I like this comment here. I got yelled at because of the company I was consulting for passed traffic through the same thing. And the chief security officer was like, "You're crazy. What if this leaks, blah, 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 or getting hacked for not securing the same thing?" Yeah. Yeah, I imagine, Nicola. That's why I was so worried. Yeah. Mm. Okay, so here's a question. What are your thoughts about quantum computing? I think quantum computing is amazing. If I were young, I would consider going into computer science for quantum computing today. The people that do quantum computing right now are the kind that like to, spend a lot of personal time with books and electronics and not very many people. But they are social. There's a lot of social people. But I don't think I have the chops to get into it. I thought I was going to become a physicist, and I didn't. I didn't get into that because I took Physics 101 and it completely humbled me, and I was like, I do not have the brain for this. I think that's a big part of IT is just accepting your limitations and knowing when you've got something good and when you don't, and what you're good at. The thing I'm really good at is seeing overall pictures and making connections between things. And languages. I'm really good with languages, whether they're natural languages or computer languages. And I can see patterns and stuff. A lot of the stuff that comes up in, computer data science, data structures and stuff. When I got into it, I'm like, and this is going to sound, I don't mean this to be flex, but like the first time I saw a linked list, I was like, okay, duh, because it's the only way to do it. It doesn't take a genius to teach you linked lists. You just have to think about it. You're like, that's really the only way to do that. How would you not know that? And so I'm not against data structures and algorithms and computer science in general, and I think my coding could benefit a lot from having these things, but seeing the big picture and making the connections is something I've been pretty good at. So that and audio things, anything related to sounds, I'm pretty good with that. So why am I telling you what my strengths are? Because what your strengths are going to be different for you. You got to figure out what they are. There's people who who visually have different visual. My wife is really good at seeing form, and that's what makes her an amazing sculptor and a great artist. Another painter, Taylor specifically, hi Taylor, if you're out there, is good at seeing, color and scene, like, and so we all have a superpower of some kind. We all do. I know you don't think you do, but you do. I promise. And it's about finding that superpower and seeing it. And for some people, that superpower is understanding quantum computing. Quantum computing means you have to understand photonic entanglement and really crazy things like that I still feel like I don't understand. I did watch a really amazing documentary. I think it was on Netflix about quantum. It actually covered quantum biology as well, which is just fascinating stuff about the quantum robin that actually has one eye that sees things differently using quantum mechanics. It's just crazy photonic entanglement. And they've proved that one. That one's been proven at this point. So, I think I could get into it. I think I would really enjoy it. Would it motivate me to do it all the time? Probably not. I'm also pretty social. So there's not a lot of social things there. I mean, one of the reasons I'm Twitch streaming all the time is because it's so much more fun solving problems together as a group. Unless the group is like in school and you're the one or two people that are really invested in finishing the project and everybody else is just sitting around doing nothing, or they're not talking because they're nervous, or they can't talk and they feel bad because they don't have anything to offer because they can't. There's a million social dynamics that happen in a group like that. And I won't lie, but Twitch streaming to me is the ideal dynamic. I'm the one talking. I have all the power. I get to say whether I agree with you or not. I can ban you if I want to. It's like, my wife would laugh, but it's kind of like the ideal soapbox because you could just get up but yet I can still interact with you. And then if I like what you have to say, okay, that's awesome. If I don't like, go away. No, you know what I mean? It's like my ideal way. So is that the way it works? Anyone having network issues? I hope you're not having network issues. I hope I'm not the only one. If you are, please let me know. My bit rate is constant at 6,000 kilobits per second right now. So 6,300 actually. And all right. So what are your thoughts on quantum computing and should we start learning it? I absolutely think you should start learning quantum computing. I think if you don't understand the techniques that are happening, if you don't understand what a qubit is, by the way, what's a qubit? We'll take care of one thing right now. What's a qubit? Well, first of all, what's a bit? What's a bit? Come on, you could throw it out there. You know this. Is 0, 1, 2, or 3? Is there a 3? I didn't think there was a 3. All right. What's a bit? Do we need to play the video? Do we need to play the Tron video?
The binary digit.
Yeah, there you go. A 1 or a 0, an on or a off, yes or a no, or true or false, right? So, yep. So, and if you want to go watch it, someone link. There's a really fun video in Tron 1986 that has a bit, 1986, 87, and it's when Flynn. I think, is it Flynn? Yeah. I think it's either Tron or Flynn first encounters a bit. Are you a bit? Yes. Are you whatever? No, yes or no. Married or happy, good or evil, binary, right? Well, here's the interesting thing, and this can kind of get philosophical really fast, okay? So this is the best thing about quantum computing that I really love. A qubit actually has 3 states. Anybody want to take a guess at what they are? 3 states. It has 3 states. I know it's a tough one. It's not that hard, but I mean, if you don't know, yeah. Okay, so yes, no, and maybe. Yep. On, off, or both. So the state in quantum computing is a 0, a 1, or I don't know. But if you study complexity theory at all, and I have the Imposters Handbook, which is actually really good. We should probably read some of that together. I'll go show you that book someday. there's a good book out there. It's called the Imposters Handbook, and what it is actually written by a non-science person, a non-computer science person who just took all of his notes and put them all in a book and said, "Here's all the basics of everything everybody always talks about," and talks about it in a very very plain English. So I really love it. And he talks about complexity theory in there, and I'm not going to talk about it here, but by being able to say we don't know as a base, binary, it's not binary, right? As a base state, you can do a lot more things with the complexity theory. It just means you have to have a lot more of them, right? In a digital computer, you can do a lot more in a small amount of space, but it takes you forever. In a quantum computer, you have to have like crazy amounts of RAM. What is the amount of RAM that they have to even do basic quantum? Does anybody remember? I can't remember. There's like, I wish I could remember it. If anybody remembers, it's pretty interesting though. So quantum computing wasn't even possible before because the amount of RAM required to do even a simple quantum process is ridiculously high. And so we're only now getting to the point where is it 128 bytes for 10 qubits. Oh my God. Yeah. So, talking about mimicking quantum computers. Yes. Imposters Handbook. Did you find it? Is that it? I didn't realize it was on GitHub. Yeah, that's it. You found it. Thank you so much for that. It's a great video. So, should I read the Imposters Handbook? Yes. And I haven't gotten through it yet, but it's really fun. I mean, it's not going to get you a job, but if you want to know the stuff that the whiteboardy kind of people are talking about, then you might want to try that. It's mapping the states, right? Google if this was for a human. Absolutely. I just didn't do it because I was talking. You can build a quantum computer that does whatever qubits you want. Yeah, but it's useless if you can't map it to conventional space. That just blew my mind already, right there. What's conventional space? Like our space right now? Like if we had a different kind of space that we can't measure? If you're going to measure space that we know in our dimensions, right? This is where it gets really fun, right? Because there's just so much to it. So yeah, depends on the manifold. See, I have no idea what that is. I have no idea. I think that's cool that you know what that is. I do not know what that is. Addressing space that we understand in our math terms, mathematical space. It's a 5-dimensional one cray. I don't know what that is. It's a 5-dimensional one. Okay. The craziest thing that I ever encountered in mathematics was in order to do game development, I created a weapon system in Second Life and a bunch of other things, pose balls and stuff like that. And I had to learn what a quaternion was. Has anybody ever played around with a quaternion? If you're doing anything in game development and in 3D game development, and I thought my brain was going to melt. I swear to God. Gimbal lock and quaternions. I swear I thought my brain was just going to completely explode because it was so hard. Oh wow, they got videos too. Cool. Hey, let's put related. I'm going to put your links here. I have nothing to do with the Imposters Handbook. Once again, I want to remind everybody when I make recommendations here, they are from me. They're not because I'm getting paid. That's not my style to do that. I would be sure to tell you if I did. I have considered an affiliate link on Amazon for some points. You're going to buy it anyway. What the hell? It might buy me an extra, round of sushi or whatever. But so there we go. What? The links to the video are pruned. Are they pruned? I'm so sorry. I mean, that link is good though, right? So a quaternion is just the representational in 3D space of a direction and a vector, like how much velocity is going in that direction. And it's really essential if you're going to do any kind of gaming or game development. But Well, how much time we got? All right, so we got 10 or 15 minutes more. And I can't believe it's just talking so fast. You can play with qubits on IBM Web Service. I've heard you can do qubits. Microsoft made a language, right? Didn't Microsoft write a language for programming quantum computers that uses emulation, so that you can get ready for coding in it and stuff? And I'm unaware of anything about it beyond that. I think it's really cool. If I were going to get into it, I tried to go into physics and I failed, so I went into Russian, which, by the way, 5 credit hours. It's the most credit hours of any class in all of BYU for 101, Russian 101. And that was a total story by itself. But I did okay in that. Languages are my thing. I can't do physics. I want to. You know what it is? It's the abstraction of most physics principles. I am such a practical person that, on everything, I have to be able to relate to it at a physical. And if I had known, I watched. Have you guys seen Particle Fever? Let me make a recommendation if you want something to do. Go watch Particle Fever. I think it's free now on YouTube. Finally. If you like the science stuff, and if you like the science stuff, it's finally free. It used to be you had to pay for it. I think this might be no, this is the one. Hadron Collider. Biggest machine. I can't. That's all I can show you. I'm going to get banned. Something's going to complain about me showing you, because I am recording this, so the sound is getting in there. So go watch it. So Particle Fever. What is Particle Fever? I show it to people all the time. I used to give people extra credit for watching it, which is kind of a joke because there's no grades in anything I've ever done. For watching Particle Fever and writing about it. In Particle Fever, they talk about the invention of the internet, and how it was used to build, the world's most powerful hadron collider, which, by the way, should have been built in America, but politics got canceled. And it's pretty interesting. So, and it does talk about quantum stuff, somewhat, not as much, but if you like that kind of thing. Comment. So I thought quantum computing was going to be the next internet. Turns out it's the next factoring primes. It's looking to me like tensor units, and machine learning is where it's at. Yeah, I agree. I think machine learning and tensor units is going to be where all the big money in the future is. That's actually a question. We'll end on this one. So, how will machine learning affect the programming field? Affect the IT industry, we'll say. And I think this is super big to cover, and it'll probably take me 10 minutes to answer this. So I happen to work in a group. If you knew the company, please don't dox me. But if you knew the company that I worked at, you would be floored to realize that they have one of the best machine learning groups in all of the industry. If you knew, in all of IT. And the applications that they're using that they're doing with machine learning, both in every dimension, sound, audio, physical, video. In fact, they're doing something where they actually use Vulkan, believe it or not. People were bringing up the word Vulkan, and they were actually meeting with the people doing Vulkan extensively for a long time. And I will say that the company I work for is not a game company, because Vulkan has the ability to do 3D. They were doing 3D, without getting into the IP of it, they're doing some amazing things using real-time machine learning with real-time 3D models generated through Vulkan from optical. And hey, how's it going? And we're just finishing up a Q&A that's going on YouTube, so be careful what you say. A guy built a whole machine by himself? Yeah. So the short answer is If you want to be, if you're just getting into IT right now, like you're 19, 20, 21, whatever, and you're going into the industry, obviously there's all the stuff in the boost you need. Your Linux is a given. Linux is the default operating system of all of IT these days. And it's going to continue to be that way. So, but the things that are going to be affected by IT are going to, I think, primarily going to be programming. I would say, and I said this during the NVIDIA, I watched the NVIDIA conference last year and a little bit with the stream here. And watching it, it's just really clear that the future of computer applications development is machine learning, period. And we're talking about things that are at this moment considered mundane are going to be done without code. And more things are being done without code. And so the approach to problem solving, which is what computer science and programming is, I mean, the whole IT profession, your entire job as an IT professional is to solve problems, to create solutions, which are called solutions for your customers at the company or for other companies. You know, software solutions is what we've been saying. Well, if the solution is train up an AI well enough so that it can do everything on its own without any programming at all, that's a solution. And not only is it a solution, it's going to be the most common solution in 5 years, in my opinion. So if I had it to do over again, the number one thing I would learn in addition to Linux and programming and stuff like that would either be cybersecurity, which you guys know I love, or it would be machine learning. If you don't know machine learning in 5 years as a programmer, you're going to be supporting, enterprise Java, Perl, and COBOL code bases, because all of the greenfield stuff that's being done now and in the future is either supporting machine learning or doing machine learning directly. And so that's where all the money's going to be. That's where all of the effort is going to be. And if you don't believe me, just look at what just look at the stuff that's being done. Just like the random dreams, AI dreams, where they try to interpret a song or something. It's getting so crazy that we're starting to. I don't think we're going to hit the natural level of intelligence forever. Personally, I think there's stuff about the quantum world and in our physical universe that is not being understood by people that say that kind of thing. What is that? The accelerator? Oh, what is this? A USB accessory that brings accelerated ML interface to existing systems. Holy cow! Let me give you an example of this. Okay, so databases. I talked about a database that I helped architect and everything, right? And one of the things about a database is creating an index, and you create an index on the most common fields that someone would go to search, right? And so you make an index, and you, as a database administrator, you got paid a lot of money because you're optimizing the speed of it. And so your database queries are shorter. Everybody saves money and time. And so your job is like putting indexes on the right fields and keeping them updated and all of that thing. And you have to do all that with code. Well, God, in 2015, I think it was around that time frame, I heard that AI was already being implemented to optimize index queries to the data sources. So, this is a no-brainer for AI. This isn't even really an AI thing. This is a hashing algorithm, right? A hashing algorithm is the way that is the algorithm that defines the rules for getting a value that goes with a key lookup, and it's the data structures and algorithms kind of thing. It's also the reason that maps in Go are not safe for concurrency, even if they're read-only, because read-only is using write operations to optimize the cache for that hash. So while it's running, if it sees you're getting the same thing a lot, it'll cache that thing. And then if you've got a big map, it'll be like, well, you get this stuff more frequently than anything else over here, so we're going to look there first, right? And then it goes to the other thing and the other thing. Well, if you start to add AI into that kind of thing, AI can optimize at 500 times that kind of level of complexity, and can build in really robust querying systems to access data in different ways that we can't even comprehend because of the complexity of the combinations. So that completely revolutionizes the whole complexity science thing, because now we have machine learning that can come in. What is it? P time? I can't remember it. Is it P time? It's starting to move things that were in one. I can't remember if it's D time or whatever. The one that's like infinitely hard and complex. It's now starting to move those problems because of the AI being there and watching everything all the time. The AI can kind of move some of those problems into the more immediate solvable time where you have an algorithm, and that whole thing is going to completely revolutionize the IT industry. It already has. So, but it's going to start to affect everything. So the optimizing a Davis query is great, but an optimizer will never pass the Turing test. Nope. No, it won't. So more and more ML scientists are thinking the same thing. Turing is boring. I don't care about an AI that can pretend to be human. I want an AI that can insert blanks. This is true too. There's a good debate there. It's the Carlin test. We're about models that have the purpose they want to optimize very well. Yes. Flipping burger, flipping robot, Cali burger, Pasadena. What the hell? What are you sending me? Oh yes, there's a robot flipping burgers now. Well, what kind of job? I want the robot to make my burger. It'll be the same way every time, and we'll get spit in. All right, that's a good one to end on. Should robots flip my burgers? Yes, I want your robots to flip my burgers. I don't care. I want robots to flip my burgers. Self-contained, absolutely. Look, if I can have the robots keeping me from having like a fire or burning my hands or something, I want a robot flipping my burgers. Seriously, you don't need to pay. They're taking your job away from a human. You know what? That's the whole like Willy Wonka argument. I don't buy it. Because Willy Wonka's dad, he lost his job to whatever, to the robot, and then they, I know, no, we want robots doing this stuff. Why? Because we want to free these people up to start doing other things. They should be able to go do other things. I'm not talking about lounge around and play Fortnite. I'm talking about solve the world's problems. And yeah, you might not think a burger flipper can solve the world's problems, but you know what? They might. They might be able to do that. Some of the smartest people I've ever known were contemplative people that had service jobs. And I told you there's a story about this I'll save for another day, but I'll tell you the story. I'll save it another day. Another day, ask me the story about the guy who flips burgers who came into my door one day at SkillStack with pages and pages of a game he wanted to make. And I'll leave you on that. I'm not going to tell you that story today. It's going to get me crying. I don't want to talk about it. It was an amazing story of how we underestimate humans all the time. And if no one reminds me, I'll bring it up tomorrow. Okay, but that's it for tonight. Why waste your brains on repetitive jobs? And that's great. We'll do that one tomorrow. In fact, I'm gonna put up here so I don't forget. How about this? No, really. It's like a continuation of the thing that we're going to leave. And 5% makes the other 9%. Yes. That's how he gets the next renaissance. Machinery supplant artists. Ooh, that's a good one. No. No, you guys are asking more questions. We're supposed to be done. I think those are great questions. I love those. What? You got another one? This better not be bad. They actually have a Flippy. Hey, at least it doesn't have an AR-15 connected to it. Stay tuned. Yeah, have you seen that video? Yeah, maybe tomorrow. Okay, so that's all. See you tomorrow. Okay, I'm ending the recording. I'm going to stay on the stream now, but I'm going to end the recording. And scene.